So Gema is also the cultural advisor to the World Council of Peoples for the United Nations and founder of the cultural platform hexagonsglobal.com within the Gema Alava studio in New York. She is the author of the book, How to Leave Your Fear Behind in a Museum from 2020, and she writes for Frontera D magazine. She has studied master's programs at the San Francisco Art Institute, graduate programs at Yale School of Management. And Gema's work has been exhibited at Manifesta, the Guggenheim, and the Metropolitan Museum in New York.
Okay, hello, I'm Gema, and I'm also doing this presentation in collaboration with Sonia María Merizalde Aguirre, documentary curator and archivist. And I think we have a little brief biography about her. So maybe we can mention the biography at the end of the presentation. And let me tell you, first of all, thank you so much for the wonderful work that you're doing, Heather, too. It's a pleasure to be here today. And before I begin with my slides, I'm in New York right now, and there is a storm and high wind. So sometimes my connection goes. If that happens, it takes around 1 minute to be back online. So if you see that I disappear, that's the reason, but hopefully it will go beautifully. So let me see if I can share my presentation. It's visible for everybody. Is that correct?
Yeah, looks good.
I think so. Very good. Thank you very much for confirming. So what I'm going to do, the reason why Sonia is not here today is because she's with COVID. She has a strong COVID. That means that she could not share some of her images with me. And as a result, what I'm going to do is to tell you why am I here today. I'm a contemporary artist, and I'm here because Sonia, who's an archivist, she saw in my work that I really work with the archive. And she not only was interested in my work as the connection with the archive, but she also told me that she was concerned about the future of the archive and how younger generations can be involved in everything that so many panelists have been talking during this wonderful symposium. So the way I structure the presentation is I'm going to read, and I'm going to incorporate in the background some of my work, which I won't have time to talk in detail about it. So you will just see visuals that I'm sure will open lots of questions. Once I'm done reading this paper, which is the collaboration between her and I am going to dedicate 5 minutes in going further with some of my personal work. So it's a very brief introduction. There we go. Sonia Merizalde explains how watermarks were originally used as an identifying element of the paper manufacturer. Once they had been shifted in the molding with the pulp to make the paper, this resulted in a shape that was engraved by printing, and these watermarks could be observed against the light. The concept of information and impressions that can be seen through the light has been a constant in my work since 2000. My artistic work raises questions related to metaphors about the interpretations of watermarks and seeing through the light. This is connected to the importance of the archive and memory in a society that must erase or forget obsolete information in order to adapt and reintegrate new information, new programs, whether technological, emotional, or cultural. The archive and the watermarks, understood by an artist in 2024, are sometimes key points to discern the information that is grain from the information that is chaff. I understand the archive as a lantern or flashlight that illuminates our steps towards the future. Sonia explains how the information provided by the filigree or the watermark is important in the study of the sustainable materials, since thanks to its location, it's possible to determine the original format, dating of a specific time of its manufacture, and also its origin. That is, the mill that was used is what determines its geographical location. Also, it shows if the paper and the watermark was made in an expensive and exclusive way, officially or by a specific royal house. Adding to Sonia's explanation and elaborating on the metaphor of the watermark, I want to mention how working myself for 2 decades in the Department of Education of the Morgan Library and Museum in New York, leading workshops for different audiences, including elementary school students, on how to make paper with pulp, made me pay attention to the connection that exists between the materials classified by the color and clarity of the water in the river where they were prepared. So it says my internet connection is.
Hi, everyone. So Gema had warned us that she might get kicked out, and it looks like that's happened due to the high winds in New York. So we'll just have a brief pause here while Gema rejoins.
We are very unstable with the new technologies. That's what the previous presenter was saying. I'm going to try to share the screen once more. So I believe I was mentioning how Sonia explains how filigree or watermarks provide an incredible source of information that manages to provide different interpretations of perspectives, since in medieval times it was customary to place a mark to identify and determine which mill elaborated and developed the characteristics of the paper with its icon. In connection to this idea, examples of my work inspired by letters from 1911 and 1990, its texture and visual interpretation invite the audience to question how we relate to the identity we form depending on the materials, culture, and society in which we grow up. In a world where we express ourselves and connect in the digital cloud of the archive, through programs such as Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, psychology speaks of an identity crisis. Establishing connections between the psychology and artistic expressions of watermarks and the use of the watermark as a metaphor for contemporary artistic expression is a field open for further investigation. On the other hand, the presence of almost invisible watermarks along the evolution of my work can be found if you look for them, because they have been incorporated or hidden as clues, such in the projects Find Me. Like Sonia says, it is only a question of following the path of the watermark. I want to make a little break and mention that because I listened to the previous presentations, they were talking about the importance of the letters and the handwritten letters. I recovered some images and I included these slides of very early work that I did with letters, fragments of letters, artist books, with more letters, including installation that I did when I was in a college studying of installations with piles of envelopes and letters. Sonia explains how the types of paper had a lot to do with the way they were made, as well as the place, the area, the climate, the season, the fiber, the proximity to a river. In her experience in Asia, she learned how the quality of the paper is directly related to the way the fiber is treated, the delicacy and the spirit shared in the process until obtaining the sheet of paper. Sonia mentions how the great masters who dedicate themselves to this task are people who flow lightly through life. They are extraordinary beings in a balanced emotional state. How do they achieve this? The degree of happiness in which they find themselves is related to being fulfilled when they apply onto the paper the techniques inherited from their ancestors. And I included an installation made with paper patterns from dresses from the 50s. And it was very interesting to see how the public, some of them will remember what these paper patterns were for, and their grandchildren didn't know what this paper was made for. And it was very beautiful. Like Sonia says, the information you put in the watermark, in the making of the watermark, I personally saw it reflected in the way reacted to dresses from the 50s, which here in New York, it was very popular because people used to make their own dresses. At the presentation of my work at the MAC, Museum of Anthropology and Contemporary Art in Guayaquil, Ecuador, where I met Sonia in the context of International Day of Museums, ICOM 2023, I talk about the need to generate platforms that are bridges between the ancestral knowledge, such as that of the Andean cultures, the archive, and the contemporary artist. This connection is also linked to our personal knowledge, emotional and spiritual knowledge. It is through proposals, workshops, and programs that, as an amalgam, we can generate all together in the audience an interest and an understanding of the archive as a key to not lose the connection with our own potential. Sonia explains how the study of watermarks is an extensive subject that demands comparative tests, research in time, dating, interpretation, analysis, verification, and validation. This way, we can be sure that we are talking about original documents and provide better conditions of stabilization and permanence over time. The same can happen in contemporary art. In my experience, the importance of choosing a material that communicates with me and transmits an idea or a feeling to an audience has to be emphasized. In my work, it is through metaphors inspired by watermarks that I communicate visually and conceptually in order to generate conversations with the audience. If watermarks have the ability to influence thoughts by the hand of contemporary artists, what can culture not achieve when it is self-aware and transmitted by artists whose work to balance the imbalances of today's world? It is possible to establish these dialogues and educate in the necessary ingredients to maintain critical thinking. The connections between the knowledge of archival curator Sonia Merizalde Aguirre and I, the fact that we are presenting together today for all of you, this is an example of wanting to move forward and find new audiences. Both of us, Sonia and I, participated last June in the International Summit of Archives from the Andes in Cusco, in Peru, where I presented the book, How to Not Be Afraid, in a museum, which is also an archival place from what has been happening to me in a decade in New York. It caught my attention back then that some of the questions were about the future of the archive. With these questions in mind, Sonia invited me to write an essay entitled Connections Between Artistic Creation and the Archive. During the next 5 minutes that I have, 13 minutes I have, sorry. During this time, I am going to share some images of some of the art that is mentioned in this essay written in Spanish. I won't be able to explain the artwork in depth, but I have no doubt that the audience will be able to recognize its watermarks. So this is the written piece. Thank you, Sonia. Let's hope we don't lose the connection again. And with this said, I want to make sure that we didn't lose time. No, very good. With this said, once again, I want to reinforce that I'm here explaining my work. I'm a live contemporary artist. I've been listening how most of the work has been about artists who are not here, and we can get to know them through the archive. I've been interested in the archive since very early times, and I didn't know that I could connect both fields. And it's been thanks to people like Sonia and archivists who saw that potential and invited me to be here with all of you today. So to give a little glimpse of the depth of my work and why Sonia invited me, I want to mention a project that I did in 2009. It's called Find Me. And to probably your amusement, I asked very famous artists and not so very famous artists to give me art pieces. One of them is Robert Ryman. He made a painting and right now it's hidden somewhere in an art school. The question of this project was what will happen if a group of artists agreed to place their work outdoors without revealing its exact location, but left some clues. It was almost like a challenge to the archive. Even furthermore, what I did is with all these clues to find these artworks, some of them are worth $500,000. And I know these days we're talking about Mauricio Catalan and the piece of the banana that has been sold for more than $6 million. With the knowledge of where these pieces were hidden, I went to the main library and also archive of San Francisco, and I placed a book in the library with all the information. Now I work as a librarian also in college, and my boss told me that libraries were a very dangerous places, because if you have very good information but you misplace it, you might lose this information forever. Another of my pieces is called Trust Me, 2010. And it's also based on the conversations that we can have, the knowledge, the information that we say, but sometimes we might not be able to see. We just listen to people telling us information. So I invited artists to go to a museum. We paid our tickets. They were wearing some glasses. And I did verbal descriptions of them, of the objects or the things that they were seeing. It's a very complex piece of work and it's been performed in different countries. But with this idea, I would like to talk about another series of pieces that are called Tell Me a Story. And it's what can we do if we gather all that information? If we place ideas in a way that they are very personal, but they cannot be read. We can take all the thoughts of the people, we can gather them all together. You can look at them, but you cannot read them. You can see them, but you cannot see the sentences. I've done different installations, and the interesting part of these pieces is that if we are immersed by fragments of paper and information that we cannot codify, it really generates spaces that are incredible for conversation, including the conversation of the archive. As an example of how many levels of the work, sometimes I can ask specific questions. I've done this at the United Nations, and the audience participates also in the ideas or the concept that can be included in the art piece, that maybe in the future, someone were looking at my own letters to know what I was trying to do with the conversation of the people that were around me. As you can see, there are many watermarks. I'm going to end with images from the final project that I'm doing called Hexagons Global. And I thought, what will happen if instead of in the walls, I take little watermarks and I place them all over the world? So I take very, very thin gold leaf, 24 karat gold leaf, and I decided that I wanted to pollinate culture and place pure gold in different parts of the world to people, to places where I can find hope, or I can keep balance with all the challenges that we have these days. The first time I placed these hexagons on the floor was in 2015 in Madrid, Spain. I just will mention about this project that gold was created in the collision of supernovas, stars. It was not generated in the earth. And I like the metaphor of our inner potential, the inner of artists, humanity, the archive, is as strong as the collision of supernovas. Therefore, it doesn't matter where this gold, this potential is. It can be in a ring, it can be in jewelry, it can be in the sole of your shoes. It's gold. The potential is always there. I don't have time to explain in depth the project, but you can always go to hexagonsglobal.com and have fun. So here we go, in the last minute. This is where it began, a hexagon in Ecuador, where Sonia is from, at the volcano Pululawa. This is another image of another hexagon that I placed in Bogota, in Colombia, in the mountains of Monserrate. That's in the main plaza where people gather. We can see another main plaza, and the hexagon is on the floor, very close to the woman that is walking. But this is not Bogota, this is Milan. And I took this picture from all the way up from Il Duomo, the Milan. And then this is another high point of another city, but it's not Milan, it's Paris. This is from Sacré-Cœur. And I placed also the hexagon there. Sometimes people interact with the hexagon, but this hexagon is not in Paris. This is in Washington Square in New York City. And sometimes, as it happens in life, when I place the hexagon, not everybody knows the potential of watermarks. They might not know the potential of the archive. They might not know the potential of contemporary artists talking about watermarks and the archive right now for future generations. And if you don't recognize it, the knowledge can be lost. So one can think that is little garbage and they want to erase this. This is in the Mercado de la Boquería in Barcelona. With this, artists can go wild and make installations and even make connections with the objectives that are being right now worked in United Nations for the benefit of the whole world. What will happen if we take all these objectives from the United Nations and we turn them into little watermarks, and maybe we make them together in group, in community as a whole? So the future, the archives, contemporary artists, I believe, and Sonia believe, that we are very important. We are necessary, and we hope that Sonia and I will inspire you today to keep researching and never let this knowledge and never let these collaborations end up on the floor where no one can see them. Thank you very much. Gracias from Sonia and from I.